But it doesn't strike me as obvious that just because a place looks like the population has slightly differently shaped faces and different coloured skins, that necessarily means the end of what we love about the place.
I don't agree.
G'day, humans. Welcome to the safe space for dangerous ideas. Here's a dangerous question for you. Is it racist to be concerned that there are now more immigrants in London than there are white English people? Has the United Kingdom reached some kind of a tipping point in how it thinks about its own national identity? And if so, how should it wrestle through those issues without rioting in the streets and in a civilized and democratic way? We've seen race riots in the UK. We've seen migrant detention hotels being set ablaze. We saw Number 10 Downing Street publicly condemning Elon Musk for using what it called dangerous and inflammatory language at a national protest, which was hosted by the far-right agitator Tommy Robinson. And today's guest was actually there at that protest, bemoaning what had become of the England of old, what had happened to teacups and crumpets and umbrellas and bowler hats. Dominic Frisby is an English comedian, a musician, an author, a philosophiser about issues of social justice and diversity, about finance and economics and Bitcoin, all things cultural, really. He had a smash hit song after he was accused of being far right for raising questions about Britain's immigration policy, entitled "We're All Far Right Now." Elon Musk himself retweeted it. It got tens of millions of views. It sounded, a little portion of it, a bit like this.
Oh, the countryside is racist. Dogs and cats are racist. Eating meat is racist. Black lives matter's even racist. Do you know what's also racist? You.
So I wanted to understand what the point of view of, I suppose, a libertarian activist is by sitting down with Dominic to wrestle with the issues of knife crime in London, immigration, race, conspiracy theories, freedom of speech, and why China is secretly stashing bazillions of dollars in gold. I hope you enjoy as much as I did. The one and only Dominic Frisby. Should we just start with the sort of burning question that many non-Brits have about Britain at the moment, which is whether the UK is fucked?
I mean, I don't think it's whether, it's to what extent.
But this has become such a meme and an obsession, especially among the MAGA crowd in the States, among Trump and Elon, that now the left is saying, and I see Brits say it often on the left, that like, this is all just a bunch of nonsense, that people, it's sort of become, that the UK has become a whipping boy for everything that ails the Western world, but actually you walk through London and it's totally fine. And, what's the big deal?
Oh, no, there really is a lot of crime in London. And, I mean, obviously, you can walk through London and not be the victim of a crime.
I've done it many times.
But there really is a lot of crime in London. And, I grew up in London. I'm in my 50s now, and it's incredible. You don't notice change when it's gradual every day. But if I was to just like stop 30 years ago and then come back 30 years later and compare the two places, they're just so very different. It really is incredible. But this thing of knife crime, like, it really is a thing. And it's just so, like, it's insane. Like, even when people had knives in the Civil War, in the 17th century or something, and people actually had walked around with big swords, it wasn't like it is now.
They didn't use them on the bus.
No. And it's like these incredibly sharp knives and like there's a fried chicken shop about maybe 70 or 80 yards from my house.
There's a fried chicken shop 70 or 80 yards from any point in the United Kingdom.
Well, exactly. We have, in the same way that other nations have Irish pubs and Chinese restaurants, we have fried chicken shops. But fried chicken shops are often the scene of the crime. Right. And so some guy was...
it's a delicious delicacy, and I can understand why people would knife each other to get more fried chicken. But
fried chicken is it could be the source, the problem. It could be like eradicated.
You don't have a problem of knives, crime, or immigration. Yeah, you have a problem of fried chicken, Dominic.
We have an epidemic of deep fried in industrial oil chicken. And but yeah, there was a guy who was stabbed in the fried chicken shop at the end of my road, and then, or actually, he was stabbed coming out of it, and he made it across the road to the bus stop, and that's where, you know, he shuffled off his mortal coil on the bus stop. And where you walk along the pavement where the bus stop is, the road kind of narrows, so you can only kind of walk one abreast. And he died, and so there was blood all over the pavement. And the council just obviously got rid of his body, but they just put some sand on the pavement where
indignity.
All the blood had been. So there was this sort of congealed sand and blood, and it was just there for a week. And you either had kids with their mums and stuff at the bus stop would there was this congealed blood.
Look, mummy, it's a raspberry snow cone.
Yeah, and people would have to walk. You know, in order not to walk in the blood, you would have to walk out into the road and then risk getting run over, and then, of course, adding to the blood.
Then there'd be more sand.
Yeah, so
deployed.
That's when the whole thing became really apparent. And I talk to my kids who go to sort of parties and have grown up, and it's just so normal to them. And you just think, how is this possible? Where did it come from? And,
I mean, there are a few things going on in that anecdote, aren't there? There's the crime itself, and then there's the kind of industrial indignity and carelessness. Like it's almost like when people were being attacked with switchblade knives in the 1920s by gangsters in East London, there was a certain glamour, a certain debonairness to it. And the idea of being like knifed in a chicken shop and dragging yourself to a bus stop and then having the local council workers pour sand on your entrails. It's not, nobody wants a TV show about this. It's not swashbuckling. Exactly.
It's how the nation has fallen. And like, I remember in the 80s, I used to do a lot of voiceovers, but I'm sort of suffering slightly from wrong age, wrong sex, wrong color in that regard. But I used to do a lot, and I narrated a lot of programs about football hooliganism, and this was in the 80s and 90s. And football hooligans, the big thing was they used to carry Stanley knives. Do you know what I mean by Stanley knives?
That's a box cutter in American parlance.
Yes, there you go. And this was like the great crime that all this sort of glamorized violence was committed with Stanley knives, and they just look pathetic compared to the knives of today, which are these, proper. I don't know where they get them. It would be like an American soldier's knife, specially designed for, getting through the forests of Vietnam while defending yourself against martial artists or something. These incredible multiple. Where it's just extraordinary. Where do they get the knives? That's what I don't understand.
Well, probably on the dark web using Bitcoin, which you're such a fan of, Dominic. Well, yes. It's probably I
wondered where the middle-aged white man would end up being responsible for it all, but there we are.
There you are. That's why. What voiceover? So I'm interested in your voiceover career, only because that's also where I started out before I went into radio, was doing commercial voiceovers. You're actually talking right now, Dominic, not to lord it over you, to the official voice of Ollie, the Kookaburra mascot of the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. When I was in my teens, I got that gig. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'll let you sit on that for a moment.
I'll let you sit on that, and I will raise you.
Yeah.
I will raise you the voice of Harpic for a new loo every time.
Get out. So for Americans, Harpic is like one of those things that you dangle over the edge of
it's the bleach
cistern. It's the bleach you spray around the edge, the blue goo that will. Wow. Okay. You win this round, Frisby. You win this round.
I don't know. That was my trump card. I was expecting to play that 3 in. I wasn't expecting it to play it straight up the top.
So is the problem essentially a law and order problem? In which case, if it's a law and order, because the critique of the United Kingdom, the sort of UK has fallen argument seems to be a much deeper one about, I don't know, socialism, public spending, immigration, the integration of Muslim communities into the country, the boats coming across from France. Like there's a whole kind of Brexit. There's this whole bag of big meta complaints that seem quite intractable. But it strikes me that people wandering around the streets with sharp knives stabbing other people should be a pretty easy, like, if you brought in Rudy Giuliani from the 1990s, presumably someone could just do something about that bit, couldn't they?
Well, it's interesting you say that because that makes you far right. Like wanting this to be properly policed is a like that just labels you far right. But you
But by whom? I mean, obviously there are stupid people on Twitter who are going to shout at you and say that, you know, the unhoused have a right to stab people too. But there'd be a large majority of Brits, presumably on both sides of the political aisle, who would be like, yeah, okay, let's fix up the law and order stuff, regardless of what we might disagree about on immigration or whatever.
All the things you cited before, you know, are contributing to the sort of the decline of the UK. And there is a whole other argument that, you know, we have better technology and better this and better that, and our lives have never been so good. So you've got those sort of two things going on concurrently. But the problem with knife crime is that it's I mean, you know, I'm going to be called racist for saying this, but it's largely black kids doing it. Although
racist.
There you go. But there are white kids. It's kind of spread to everyone. But I think it's a sort of, and it's glamorized in all the music and so on. But if you target black kids, then with your stop and search and all that, black people complain that they're unreasonably targeted by the police, and they probably are. And so then you go one stage further, and then what you have is it's very difficult to police a multicultural society. It's much easier to police a monocultural society because as soon as, like, for example, a white guy stops a black guy, it becomes a colour issue rather than a law issue. It should be just a simple law issue, but it becomes a colour issue. And there are loads of black guys. Like I used to drive a Ford Capri, which was a sort of tacky
coming up in the world.
Car. Yeah. This was when I was much younger. And it was literally every other time I drove that car, I got pulled over by the police. And it was just exhausting. And it just drove you mad. So in the end, I got rid of the car. Actually, I didn't. I crashed it. But
well, same diff. You did get rid of the car, just unwillingly.
But yeah, it wasn't a choice. But anyway, the car was gotten rid of. And I just, in whatever car I had next, I think I had a Mazda or something. You know, I just never got pulled over ever. And I was like, oh, wow, you can actually drive a journey without being pulled over. And so if you're a black guy who is just constantly being pulled over by the police, it drives you insane. So I get all sides of it. And you do think that, you know, a common complaint is that police resources are being wasted policing the online hate bill or whatever it's called, when they should be doing police knife crime. And you do think that this could be solved. I think a lot of knife crime will just get off. So, for example, my daughter and son were at a New Year's Eve party, and some kids tried to break into the party or something. And then there was another kid who was at the party who got a knife from the kitchen and tried to defend the people trying to get into the party. This is like 16-year-olds. This is how insane it is. And ended up knifing someone 9 times. Like, how do you stab someone 9 times? And but anyway, the person who was stabbed somehow miraculously didn't die and didn't press charges. So the kid who did the crime never went to jail because the victim didn't press charges.
I've never quite understood why does the victim need to press charges? Like, I don't quite get that. Like,
I don't know.
Yeah, like if your person's killed, the victim's family doesn't get to say, "Don't worry about it." Like, murder's the crime. The stabbing is the crime, regardless of whether or not the victim is cool with it.
You know? I don't know. The answer is I don't know, because I heard the story from my kids who were 16, 17 at the time. So
highly unreliable narrators, probably.
You know, there's holes in the story. But in any case, it's not uncommon you see the sentences some of these guys get, and you think they're so short. You just think, well, it's just not a big enough deterrent.
Right.
And so the crime continues.
And there's probably also a narrative, just to bring it back to left and right and race, about community policing, or what these communities actually need is more, I don't know,
police officers.
Yeah, ethnic police officers or
They do.
support in the community, or that they need more youth, community groups, or they need, better ways of spending their time, or they need better education, or they need treatment or
It
something.
might have changed now, but I used to live in Brixton, I live in Brockley now, which is, pretty mixed area, but Brixton was a very black area in the 90s, and I used to live there then. And if you were a black guy and you became a police officer, you were often seen as a traitor. So you've got that issue as well. They had that expression chalk ice, which would be a black on the outside, white on the inside. So
Right.
it's there's just so many. It's just really difficult policing a multicultural society. It's much harder.
But it was a I'm not sure. I'm sure it is more difficult, but it's only more. Yeah, it's more difficult when you want to police a multicultural society and also be colorblind and sensitive to racial discrimination. Right? It wouldn't be if the cops had their hands unshackled and were able to pursue ethnic groups on the basis of the probability that they're going to be guilty of crimes. And there are multi-ethnic societies. I don't think Australia is very multi-ethnic and doesn't have a ton of knife crime. And, there are cities in the States, I'm thinking of, huge Hispanic populations in Texas and stuff, which don't have huge crime. So I think something else is going on.
Knife crime is a thing in the States.
Well, no, I was also thinking in all of those examples that you're talking about, the guy would have been shot instead of stabbed.
Yeah. I don't know the answer, and but I do know it's a massive problem, and whatever we're doing now is not working.
On the question of Metropolitan Police being distracted by it because they're hunting for people online who've said mean things about migrants or something, to what extent is that a problem, and do you fear it at all, given that you are perceived as being a polemicist who writes offensive songs about things? Like in a climate where we see stories about Graham Linehan being arrested at the airport for being mean to trans people, or, comedians being arrested for making their pug dogs do Nazi salutes, or it just seems we've got the same problem in Australia. But to my having lived in the States for a long time, and given that I swim in fairly libertarianish, free speechy circles in the States, it seems absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, it is a problem, and I read the stats, and we have by far and away the highest numbers of people being arrested for online stuff in the world, and it's such a total waste of resources. It's also so stupid. Like, why would you send 5 police officers to arrest Graham Linehan at an airport? Because that's going to backfire on you from a PR point of view. And, the police look stupid. Whoever made the law looks stupid. It's just a terrible PR exercise. But, maybe this is a journey we have to go through. But I think technically, Graham, we have this online hate crime act. And I think technically Graham was breaking the law. But that means that pretty much anybody says online any day is breaking the law.
And for people who aren't as online as we are, Graham Linehan, comedy writer who has become, I would say, somewhat deranged by his fixation on the trans issue. But I certainly don't think he should be prosecuted for it. He's he would be what trans activists would call a TERF, someone who, has been shouting from the rooftops for years about the importance of women having their own spaces, biological women free from trans women. And when you say that he's in contravention of this law, what does the law say, and what would he have said that would have contravened it?
Do you know what? I don't even know what the law says.
Call yourself an economist. Call yourself a satirical musician.
I don't know. I just know you're not allowed to say hurty things. And I know that the online hate crime, I can Google it, but I think it
that's all right.
Good.
No.
Watchers.
But
I guess Graham was in breach of it.
When you say that it's stupid because the police should know that they are going to cop some flack for it, I'm not sure that they do cop flack from the people who they care about, which is the people who are convinced that they're on the right side of history and are very worried about social unrest and, race riots and hatred and the bashings of trans people or whatever. And they think that the solution is simple, which is that we should just be nice to each other. And so anyone who says things that are obviously stirring people up or contravening what we all know to be a right way of thinking should be excluded from the public sphere. I think they earnestly believe that they're on the right side of this issue? I don't think they think that they're censorious, right? Or
Oh, for sure, they think they're on the right side. And one of the problems with dealing with people, we'll call it the left, but that worldview is that if you contradict them, that is in itself spreading hate, and that is divisive. So to have a different opinion is blasphemous. And the problem is a lot of people do have a different opinion. But yeah, it's. I mean, there are so many problems. For me, one of the biggest problems is a lack of coherent philosophy that everyone can agree on is the right way to live. And if you could have that coherent philosophy, you know, everyone agrees that this, you know, for example, free markets are good, or everyone agrees that, you know, we need a benevolent welfare state, or everyone agrees. If you could find things that and then it would be the government's duty to uphold that and live by that philosophy, then you would have first principles to fall back on. But we just have successive governments that have no coherent ideology, that have no first principles, that they aren't libertarian, or they aren't socialist, or they aren't even social democrats. They're technocrats, bureaucrat. Each issue that arises is dealt with on the merits of that issue without coming back to first principles. And, you know, with mass immigration, which, by the way, is inevitable in the world in which we live, there are, you know, 8 billion people in the world, 7 billion. This is the thing that you never hear in the immigration arguments, that is just the sheer mathematics of it. 8 billion people in the world, 7 billion on less than $40 a day. And so that's 7 billion people. And almost, I think now more people have one of these, a smartphone, than have a toilet around the world. And I mean, it's an incredible fact when you think about it. So the 7 billion people on less than $40 a day, all of whom have a smartphone, all of whom, and if there's one thing smartphones do, it's give you FOMO. You know, you look at Instagram, or you look at whatever it is, Facebook, doesn't matter, Google even, and you just see better lives. You know, you just you're just sharing an ordinary clip of you walking down the street in London to some guy in sub-Saharan Africa. All he sees is these beautiful buildings in London. He doesn't even need to see what's going on, and he thinks, well, that's better than, you know, where I am. So you have everyone with a smartphone, which is creating mass FOMO around the world about better lives to be had elsewhere. You then have better transport than we've ever had in history. So you can almost fly around the world in 24 hours now, never mind 80 days. And, you know, better cars, better planes, better trains, better everything. So you have the means to get somewhere else. You're then, you have, because of the smartphone, you know, you can be put in contact with a people trafficker quite easily, and you pay your money and you get trafficked, and you get, you know, a lovely dinghy ride to wherever it is you want to go. And so you just have all these means. And so the mass migration of people is just inevitable. And, you know, you're protected from it in Australia because you've got these huge oceans. And so,
well, I'm not sure that's true. No, I'm not sure that's true. That's the reason. I don't think that's the reason. Australia has made a Faustian pact for decades, which is to deploy an extremely brutal, possibly illegal under international law, but very popular policy of that anybody who arrives. It's not actually hard to get to Australia by boat, to get to the north of Australia by boat from Indonesia. And for years, there was a people smuggling trade from sort of Central Asia and South Asia through Indonesia into Australia. And the government just decided that they were going to intercept every boat and make a pledge that anyone who arrived illegally was never going to set foot in Australia. And we bribed South Pacific Island nations to take them and put them in open-air concentration camps. And then we bribe other countries to take them. And we have a very orderly and very generous immigration policy, which works quite well, because the buy-in that you need from, I mean, I think there was an insight by Australia's first immigration minister, who I think was Arthur Caldwell after World War II, when the post was created, who told the Prime Minister that we need a lot more labour, we're going to need lots of migrants, and the Australian people are generous and will accept lots of migrants if they believe they have control over who's coming in. And that's what has made Australia, I think, one of the most successful immigrant countries with some of the least tensions, because there is a sense that we will be ruthless at the border and then generous on policy. The UK could do it and could have done it. There's no reason why boats should be able to cross the channel.
I stand corrected on that front. I knew about the ruthless Australian policies, but I didn't realise they were quite ruthless. Even so, even with all that said, the channel is easier to cross than the oceans to Australia.
Yeah, but it's not beyond the capacity of Her Majesty's Navy to police it.
I agree. And so you can focus your immigration policy at the airport. And it's maybe it's a tad easier to organise. But even so, that as you say, it's not beyond our capabilities to organise it. But because of this pathological fear of being labelled racist, we haven't even been able to have this conversation about immigration. You know, if you said what is the right number of immigrants to have every year? If every government has successively pledged to get the number down, and the number's increased, and I think we're on hundreds of thousands a year. I think last year net immigration was, I want to say 600,000, something like that. But total immigration was above 1 million. So 600,000 left, and but anyway, so it's an extraordinarily high number given that we're only a country of 60 million. But this is all to do with the decline of Christianity, not knowing who we are, not knowing what our national identity is, having a confused national identity, mixed messages, the fall of one culture without anything coherent rising to replace it. The whole sort of diversity inclusion narrative is just full of holes, and we've tried to live by that to show that we're actually great guys. But it's been exposed for having all
what are the holes, Dominic?
Well, what's happened to the whole of Western Europe, and we've sacrificed ourselves and our and to an extent our children at the altar of this new religion, and
but what does that mean in practice? Because a lot of people will be watching this or listening to this and thinking, I went to Paris a couple of years ago. It was lovely. We, wandered around. It's still pretty. It's still quaint. I go to London a lot. I love it. It's a great city. These are thriving, bustling, multicultural, multi-ethnic cities, which are probably richer for being diverse. But you're talking about an underbelly or a double-edged sword there. But paint a picture of what that means.
Well, so white English has been a minority in London for more than 25 years now. And if you said 50 years ago, in 25 years' time, white English people will be a minority in London, people would have gone, what? And white English is now a minority in pretty much every major city in England, and even in Scotland. It's going that way. And I look at the demography of primary schools, which would be the schools you go to from the age of 4 to 11. And because what the demography of the problem with so many of these numbers is that you don't know what the truth is. How do you report accurately on numbers of illegal migration if you don't know they're here? If they're here illegally, it's very hard to get the actual numbers. And then you have the census, but people aren't honest to the census because people think the census is something else, and you have double counting, and censuses just aren't that accurate. But everybody sends their kids to school, well, pretty much everybody. So if you look at the demographics of primary schools, you get a very clear idea of what the demographics of the country will be in half a generation. And the demographics of primary schools are extremely telling in that this isn't just in cities, but across the country, even in remote rural areas, white English will be a minority by the early 2030s across the whole country.
But what's the problem with that? I mean, that isn't a racist objection. You know what I mean? Like, I can sort of understand the objection to...
The issue is that we've totally changed the demography of our country. Now, you can say that's good, or you can say that's bad. You can say diversity is better. We'll all have, we've all got Indian food and Italian food, so it's great. But if the rest of the world looks at, what an Englishman is, and what the rest of the world's perception of who an Englishman is, and what what is actually an Englishman are two quite different things. The rest of the world's perception of what an Englishman is probably dates back 20 years. And, you know, the rest of the world probably thinks about Hugh Grant or James Bond or something like that. Whereas the nature of what an Englishman is has completely changed. Now, it's like a, I wouldn't call it peaceful. It's not quite the right word, but we haven't been invaded in the way that, you know, the Nazis invaded other countries during World War II or that, you know, William the Conqueror, but the indigenous people have been replaced, are being replaced. The other problem is because of our ludicrously expensive housing, local people don't reproduce at high rates. This is across the whole of Western Europe. And in the UK is not, I think Italy is the worst. And in Italy, the replacement rate is less than 2, which is incredible for a Catholic country.
Oh, it's well less than 2 everywhere, isn't it? I mean, if you exclude immigration, I think it's down to like 1.2 or something per couple in Italy. So which is catastrophically low.
It is well, you use the word catastrophic. Why is it catastrophic? Why is it bad if you can just replace it with people from another country?
It's catastrophic because there aren't going to be any Italians left.
Well, exactly.
So if you're an Italian, no, but I think there's a risk here because the strong version. Yeah,
if you notice the just to finish, and then I'll let you go off on one. Is the there won't be any English left in the way that they were known that you could perceive an English person to once be. Because we're replacing ourselves. We're reproducing at barely the rate of survival, but immigrant people reproduce at much, much higher rates. They have much, much bigger families. And so we're just changing our culture. Maybe that's good. Maybe it's normal. Maybe it's just the natural way of things. But it comes back to that original point I said, is that we have to respect the fact that there are a lot more. You know, there's 7 billion people in the world, only 60 million in the UK or 65 million. We can't have everyone. Western Europe can't take everyone. It's just mathematically impossible. But everyone wants to come to Western Europe while we have a benevolent state and it's easy to get there and they can get welfare and so on and so forth. So we have to have an honest conversation about what is the right number. And because otherwise, you know, I wrote a song, once it's gone, there's not a chance it's ever coming back. And that really is the case.
Aren't we already there? I mean, the Englishman with the cup of tea and the bowler hat and the umbrella is not, you know, that's not going to be the norm henceforth. No. But the question is that necessarily a bad thing in a big, complicated, globalized, multi-ethnic world? Like, I think the strong version of the case for the problem of immigration in Western Europe and the UK would be that there's a failure to integrate certain communities, particularly ones that are religiously conservative and might be quite sexist and homophobic and have ideals that are quite antithetical to liberalism. And the ghettoization of some of those communities in the banlieue of Paris or, you know, pick your sort of decrepit third-tier English city with its woes is, you know, a problem that has been allowed to run out of control. There's also, I think, a legitimate question of the people were never consulted about this. This has just been a bipartisan thing that has just sort of kept happening, and both parties have just kind of agreed that they should keep doing it. And as you say, to raise the question of whether it's a problem has been to code you as racist. But it does sound a little bit racist to fret too much about like you said, we'll lose our culture. And do you have to lose your culture just because people have darker skin? Like, I mean, yes, I can imagine.
You do.
Do you? What if they take on? Yeah, but what if they absorb the ethos of Britain?
Well, they don't.
But they could. Many do.
Some do. But
I mean, many do. Like Australia, you know, Australians in the 50s were all, you know, blonde-haired and blue-eyed surfers, and then we imported lots of Italians and Greeks, and we became a bit swarthier, and now we've got lots of Asians, and it's a very Asian country. We're still not very African, but we could be, and everyone kind of bangs around and gets on. Now, there are problems, I think, with culture. Like, it's extremely important to figure out how to integrate communities that have been traumatized in foreign civil wars or who are deeply conservative or religiously delusional if they're Islamists or jihadists or something, and you don't want those people coming in. But it doesn't strike me as obvious that just because a place looks like the population has slightly differently shaped faces and different coloured skins, that necessarily means the end of what we love about the place.
I don't agree. I think you different people, different culture.
G'day, humans. Well, if you've listened to this much of the episode, then you must enjoy it, presumably, unless you're just listening for masochistic reasons. So you should listen to the rest of it. And the way you do that is by subscribing to the premium feed, where you not only get to hear the rest of this delightful conversation, and trust me, it gets better than what you just heard, but you also get to hear no ads, 0 ads. And previously, up until now, you had to go to the old Substack to do that and follow me on Substack and add one more platform to your life if you're not already on Substack. But here's the thing. We are now on Apple Premium Podcast as well. So with one click, Apple will just subscribe you up to the premium feed. You'll be able to listen to the rest of this conversation right now. So open up your Apple Podcasts, click the old Pay Old Zepsy button. That's probably what it's called, Pay Old Zepsy. And you click the button, and then you no longer have to be a free rider. You can feel like you're contributing to the mission of this show, which is really what we're all here for: better conversations, a freer, more freewheeling attitude towards the things that we can talk about, a way to steelman our opponents and to take the most gracious approach towards disagreement. That is what you're voting for when you vote for Uncomfortable Conversations by going into your Apple Podcasts and clicking subscribe. I love you. If you don't do that, that's fine. I'll see you the next free episode, I guess. Take care.